Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom, salam alaikum. Peace be upon you. Hello. Name is Trevor out of Buni Amurü Nuni, PALACIO. Welcome to WAMALALI out of Buni Amurü Nuni Media, Africa. Today I have a special guest, my mentor, community builder, activist, humanitarian mentor, Ernest McMillan, founder of the Fifth Ward Enrichment Program in Houston, Texas, and a bunch of other things that he will share with us today. The topic of discussion today will be the Black struggle, where we've come from, where we're at in 2021, a message to the youth, both male and female, and the Black nation as a whole, from myself and Brother Ernest McMillan. We want to thank President Daniel and Nwabunu, President of the United States of Africa, for the opportunity to be able to present myself as a Garifuna of my nation as Garinagu, and of course, the voice of the people. We also want to thank the Pan-Africanism movement for being involved with the things that we do day in and day out. The time has come for us to shift our mentality from simply having autonomy, where most of us really don't, simply having autonomy, to a mentality of self-determination. So, with no further ado, Brother McMillan, if you could please introduce yourself before we go into the questions. Welcome aboard, sir.
Well, good afternoon, and it's a lovely day in my neighborhood. Hope it is for you and yours. Trevor, you've said more than I can ever expect to say. I would like just to add that I'm in the twilight of my years, and I'm hoping I'm speaking to youth as well who are looking at their majority days in front of them. And so I'm hoping that we can exchange some ideas. I'm hoping it'll be a dialogue of some sort. I'm not the sage on the stage, but I'm hoping that we can all consider ourselves interacting and sharing. So there's a thin line between learning and teaching, and I hope we can go back and forth on that line today. Thank you, Trevor, for inviting me. I've known you since you were preteen in Houston, Texas, and you showed your love and enthusiasm for carrying out the work and not just talking the talk many times. And so from working in the graveyard and cutting down weeds and preparing the land that honor our ancestors, to leading the charge on multicultural youth actions, to today pioneer international efforts. So I'm just honored to be with you in this fashion. It's been a while since we were able to be physically close, but we remain connected. And that's the beautiful part. Even though we're distant, we're more connected now, perhaps, than ever before. So I'm honored to be with you and share what little I know and learn from your organization and the participants, hopefully worldwide, male and female, about where they see things headed. I would like to see myself as I'm a backseat driver. You guys have got the wheel. I'm happy to tap you on your shoulder if I see a curve coming, or a police officer flashing his lights on you, or some traps and dead ends ahead. So I'll be here for that purpose, just to support and honor and help keep the movement going. So I see myself just passing the torch of our people for generation after generation after generation have been struggling for self-determination. And that fight continues today.
We agree with you 1,000%, Brother Mac. And I personally want to thank you for being one of the elders who, it's obvious that you have not forgotten your days of young. You have not forgotten what it meant to be an adolescent child and to become a preteen and then become a teen and then become a young man and now a senior, right? You've always shown me that you have never forgotten what that means. And therefore, the way you treated us and continue to treat us has been with dignity and respect ever since we were young. And I want to thank you for that, for being present and being a fort for being someone who actually was entrenched in the movement back in the 60s, and that's what we're about to talk about today, to where we're at right now. So without further ado on that, Brother Mac, it's 2021, and we're just going to have a conversation here, you and I. It's 2021. The Black struggle seems, from my perspective, to be the same from 50 years ago, 2021. I've seen some progress. I would be remiss to say that I have not seen progress. I've seen some progress in certain places. But in 2018, Danye Jones was hung in Ferguson off of a tree. 2001, America. Could you take us back in history and then bring it back and forth 2021 and see what kind of changes you have seen, but start a little bit with your prison experience where you were exiled practically and had to come back and do this prison time because you were a civil rights activist?
I'm going to have to start at a different place, perhaps.
Right.
I'm the third generation in my family that's born legally free, not enslaved. Mm-hmm. And so I'm standing on the shoulders of many generations that came before me. My mother and father came, and their peers were the second generation out of enslavement in the United States. My grandfather and grandmothers were the first generation out of enslavement. And every step we've made in this country, even during and before enslavement, has been constant steps forward and then attempts to take us back. So there's been that motion. Even the founders of this country, so-called, the colonializers who were the signers of the Declaration of Independence, the signers of the Constitution, and 12 U.S. presidents were all slave owners.
Right.
So we have that legacy. When people say, this is not us, when they see lynchings and when they see police brutality, they say it's not us. It is us. It is the United States. It was founded on the blood of Native American, indigenous people, right, on the backs of African Americans, African people, on the back of people of color. There were equal number of lynchings in California and Arizona and Texas of Latinos, right, as well as throughout the deep South of African American people. Right. And so that's been the legacy of this country. That's what we've had to face. Each generation has before them the conditions that they face, and we have to deal with it. And so just going back to what you said earlier about making a call for young people to join in this journey through the Fifth Ward Enrichment Program, right, there were some who heard us and did not respond. Right. There were some who heard us and turned their backs and said, to hell with y'all. There were some, a very few like yourself, who said, I'll join this struggle. So we've had that throughout our history. But people who've ignored and people who've faced and people who've been courageous in the face of it. So I want to give my homage, my salute, my heartfelt thanks to all of those who responded to the call. Right. During the time we were kidnapped from Africa, during the time we were thrown in the dungeons of the slave ships and traveled across the oceans, and we fought and resisted on the lands in this country. We fought for our freedom in the Deep South, rebellion time after time, over 250 slavery boats that took place throughout this country. Not talking about the work stoppages and the times we spent in the master's coffee or wished he was sick or helped him to get sick. So there were all forms of resistance throughout our struggle. We were, at the time that the United States became a United States of America, the promise of equality was there, promised by the blood hands of slave owners. Right. So we were told a lie from the beginning. Right. We were also told that we would join the Civil War and we could be free. That was another lie. We were placed back in enslavement. Yeah. During the Reconstruction period in the Deep South, the federal troops withdrew. I believe it was in 1888 or somewhere around that time, and withdrew and left us to the hands of the Klan and the White Citizens Council, and put us back into slavery on the lands without much different from enslavement before that. Right. And so we've gone forward through depressions and from civil rights movement. And out of the civil rights movement came some victories, like you said, like the equal rights and the voting rights.
Right.
But at the same time, there was a president elected following that started mass incarceration.
Yeah.
And unparalleled levels.
Right.
And we had a black president, but following his tenure, we've had the most racist, openly racist president of all. So every step we make, there's been an attempt to take us back. Right. And so I sent you a little link to a song called "We Will Never Turn Back." Right. And that's the spirit I'm hoping to embody today. And I'm hoping to encourage that wherever you are, if you're in a student situation in a university, if you're homeless, if you're in prison, if you're a businessman, if you're a pastor, if you're a mother with several children, if you're a teenager who is facing abuse at home, wherever you are, whatever you're facing, there's a calling deep inside. I hope you will listen to, you will heed. And that calling is to move us forward as a people, collectively. Let's go forward. Wherever you are, there are your gifts, there are your talents. Let's nurture them. Let's sharpen them. Let's increase our gifts and talents and share that with our community, whatever it is. Right. If you love to sing, that could be a revolutionary song. If you love to write, there could be a letter to open somebody's eyes. If there was a gift for business, you could create enterprises that would aid our community. So on and on and on. Right. There's something you can do. There's no excuse. There's no escape from your duty to be compelled if you listen to that voice inside to come to the aid of our community. So we've been on a mighty long trail. It's been an unbroken string of resistance, of defending ourselves against abuses and the fight for liberation. All of those are our legacy. Right. So how can we together, even as individuals looking where we are, and then collectively, how can we come together to keep this struggle alive? So those who came before us, they've been praying for this generation. Right. You are the ones we have been praying for. Right. What are you going to do now? So I don't have the answers, but you have the answers in your heart to tell us. I can only share some of the things we've learned and some of the things you might need to look out for and be aware of. And so that's what I hope contribute to help keep the torch and the fire and the movement moving strong.
Agreed upon. And I like to say that I am the answer to my ancestors' dreams. You know, they prayed, they asked the universe for something, and here I am. They're the answer to their requests. You are an answer to that third generation's dream, being the third generation out of slavery, Brother Mac. Thank you for sharing that with me. And all of this time that I've known you, it's your first time sharing that with me, or maybe the first time that I recall you sharing that with me. But the ones who were in the field, they prayed, and you, Brother Mac, was an answer to that. Yeah. So I think about the psychological impact and the games that are played with us, Brother Mac. And what I mean by that is this. Integration, for an example. Before integration, Black businesses were thriving. Home ownership in Black communities was booming. Universities, Black ones, were doing well. And then integration came under the illusion, right, of you are now a part of the system. Again, Danye Ferguson just hung in Ferguson 2018, a couple of years ago. Let's talk about the psychological play that they play with us that makes us think that they're actually doing us a favor or giving us something that's going to benefit us. And at the end of the day, like integration, home ownership is down. Historically, Black universities are closed or closing, right? The word is yours.
Well, I'm going to have to go back again before I go forward. Talk about that very first generation that came out of enslavement. They had nothing. They were only the clothes on their back. They were promised 40 acres and a mule.
Right.
They were promised they could be a part of society. But we had nothing. We had no bootstraps to pull up, pretty much. And the government was not there to help. There were some attempts, I'm guessing, through Freeman schools and the Freeman Association and so forth. Mm-hmm. But we managed to elect our own officials who were later disenfranchised and kicked out of office, of course. Right. We built homes. We built farms. We built churches. We built schools. And we built businesses out of dust. Yeah. And so we can do it. That's no doubt about that. Because we came from the most adverse, oppressed situations to make it happen. Right. My grandfather built the first Black hospital in Dallas in 1918. Yeah. This was the time when the Klan was strong, marching around the streets of Dallas, wearing their hoods and capes and crosses, right, and burning them open in broad daylight. Right. This was the time when soldiers coming home from World War I promised that they fight against fascism in France, yes, come back home and face no democracy at home. Yes. Well, these were the times when Tulsa was burnt to the ground, when cities and towns in Florida and other across the country, when there were race riots taking place nationally to put us back in our place, so to speak. And yet and still, he joined other Black men and women to build in the face of this. So I can't underestimate that at all. I just got to keep going back to that, right, to say we can do it, and we have done it. The problem is that, let me just say the good part, like you said, is evident. Right. Very positive. I grew up in Freemantown, Dallas, the first settlement for African-American people in Dallas, Texas. Everything I needed was right there. Mm-hmm. I could go to elementary school, middle school, and high school, all within 1.5 mile radius. My church was 6 blocks down the street. We had businesses, restaurants, shoe shine shops, barber shops, taxi companies, our own newspaper published there. We had our own library that wasn't built with city money, but built behind the trustees of African-American men and women business who put the money to build the first library in our community, the Paul Lawrence Dunbar Library, which is no longer there. So we had an oasis. In a way, it was a cocoon for me. I felt safe. I felt nurtured. I had my aunt, my family, and my neighbors who looked out for me. Right. In fact, it was always not so good because I couldn't mess around too much, without somebody telling somebody they saw me where I wasn't supposed to be. Right. We had swimming pools, parks, you name it, community centers. The NAACP headquarters was there. The Muslim headquarters became there. Right. My high school was there. My high school was the first high school that taught Black history in the state of Texas.
George Washington, right?
Well, it was called Negro history then, or color history. But anyway, it was the first in the nation, and as far as I know, in Texas. It started a public school teaching Negro history. And Leslie Patton, Dr. Patton, was the principal who created that curriculum. My pastor was a fiery speaker, Reverend I.B. Loud, who encouraged us to dig and lean on the Lord, so to speak, unquote. And people did that. And so that legacy, it hurts my heart now to see that community no longer there. In 1970, it was pretty much burnt to the ground, right, razed to the ground by business enterprises who drove people out, forced people out, to disinvest it in that neighborhood, yeah, who sealed us off. So at one point, I could look from McKinney Avenue all the way to Ross Avenue and see no buildings. That's almost a mile radius, right, where there was a thriving neighborhood. The library was knocked down. The cab companies were knocked down. The newspaper company was knocked down. My homes were built, knocked down. Yeah. So all those took place. And we had to scatter to other places, and we spread out. I just want to say basically that we resisted as best we could, but people were bought off one by one or forced off, or even had their gas turned on and mysteriously blow up the property, things like that. But to me, there's forces of imperialism, forces of capitalism that were in play that says that the rich get richer and the poor get poor. That's a dynamic that's inherent with this system of racism. Right. So the economy, along with the racist tactics, worked hand in hand to not only disenfranchise us politically, charging us tax to vote, right, making us count the sands of grain in a bottle to be able to pass a literacy test, things like that, to economic displacement.
Right.
Forced urban removal.
Right.
So it destroyed those neighborhoods.
Right.
And so we had to fend for ourselves to figure out where can we go, where there were no schools. In my neighborhood, the professors, the teachers, the janitors, the postal workers, the waiters and porters, all of the business owners, all lived in that 1-2 mile radius. But you step out of that and go downtown to buy some shoes, or a dress or pants, you couldn't try them on. You had to ride in the back of the bus to get downtown.
Right. You
had to use a certain water fountain that had colored Negro only written on it. You couldn't get a loan. A black woman could not even buy a house in her name. She had to get her husband's permission to buy a home.
Right.
So all those were still, in fact, outside of our neighborhood. And there was lynchings going on around us inside the neighborhood even. So I'm just saying that integration was a beautiful thing. It's something we can treasure, but there's natural growth to it, and the forces of economy that force the big to get bigger and expand or die. Right. So we were facing that force, and we didn't have a good response for it then. There's nothing you can really legislate. There's nothing you can morally preach. It'll happen because these forces of economics are independent of our will, but they are based on greed and accumulation of wealth, to where wealth is concentrated more and more in the hands of fewer people. Right. And the poverty is increased magnitude. So it's like it's like a triangle. At the top are the few powerful, at the bottom is a big base of the disenfranchised, the unpowered people. So I don't know, I have a nostalgia. I have a longing for that sense of being what happened. But I have to move on and say, look, what can we do in the face of it? How can we build cooperative efforts? Right. How can we launch together economic drives? Right. How can we get rid of this colonial mindset, this imperialistic force that invades our communities, along with military, Marines, and missionaries working hand in hand? So it gets to that psychological point too. Right. I just want to say a little bit about the psychological point. Right. Racism is a disease. It's manifested in so many different ways. And oftentimes we internalize that oppression. We are taught to hate ourselves, to cheer for Tarzan in the movies, and against the natives, to cheer for the cavalry slaughtering the native Indians, and so forth. We're taught to see ourselves as ugly, to be unworthy, that our big noses are horrible, that our big lips are ugly, that our nappy hair is not just strong, beautiful hair, but it's bad. Right. So we have young women across the world buying bleaches or buying straightening or refusing to accept their natural hair. We have men who assume that they are the dictators of their families and rule by force. Right. We beat our kids because that's how the slave master beat us when we wanted to do right. So there's these handicaps of things that we've internalized that we need to heal from. It's been an intergenerational trauma that we've faced. Generation after generation after generation, we've been traumatized through slavery, enslavement, and all. And we got to find a way to break that cycle to begin to heal ourselves collectively and individually. So I'm asking us to look in terms of this disease, this misthinking, this misunderstanding about life, about ourselves, and begin to purge ourselves through a step-by-step process of getting healthier, getting better in terms of looking at ourselves and seeing beauty and seeing a future rather than a dead end.
Agreed upon. Brother Mac, you were here in the again in the era of the civil rights movement. Right now, I want to talk about leadership a little bit. Okay. When I look outside the box, and the box is black, I'm inside of the black box. I am black, right? And everything that has to do with black. So, and I'm just using this as an analogy, being in that box of blackness. When I look outside of the box of blackness and I look at the Asian community, when I look at the Jewish community, when I look at the Latino community, the Italians, and the list goes on. When I look at other groups who have not one of them can say they've been through what we've been through, period. And we're not going to go into that conversation of who suffered the most. I just want to discuss leadership and what one leadership does versus another leadership. And the good Bible says, by their fruit shall you know them, right? So when it comes to the leaders of the past and the leaders of now, what is the difference between the two? What is the similarity between the two when it comes to successfully being able to collectively work together to build the Black institution, to build the Black nation? Because when I look around, I don't see it. Whether it's the NAACP or Farrakhan and his crew, or ADOS, which is a new group coming out, African descendants of enslaved people. I don't see any of them saying, hey, how do I work with all of the others? Let's work collectively to build.
Yeah. Okay, that's a big bite to chew right now. So let me break it down a little bit. We haven't had decades and decades, generation of bad leaders. That's a mistake. We've had homegrown grassroots leadership who've been forthright, honorable visionaries who've carried out the fight.
I agree.
Who have continually to wage struggle.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, we've had hand-picked leaders, paid for, chosen to be the buffer, to be maintaining the status quo, to be empowered with money and finances and position and media to run what they say they can run. Right. In Dallas, for example, there were 14 pastors when I was active in the civil rights movement here that were on the list of the mayor for him to call. Speed dial.
Yeah.
If you ever needed them to do anything to promote a campaign or to say bad things about SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or any progressive movements, they would jump out there and say, we gonna do it, master.
Yeah.
So you have that calling based on power arrangements. Some people, businessmen owed money to banks. Right. And they could be forgiven a loan if they would say the right thing, or they could be given more loans if they said the right thing. Right. So you had those manipulations going on to steer people wrong. But don't get it wrong, miscued, that we had no powerful leaders. We had Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer. You can go on and on and on. The first pioneer of the civil rights movement, Brother George Moore in Florida. His home was blown to bits. He and his wife on an anniversary night was killed by Klansmen because he had raised 300 or more registered voters and was fighting against a lynching that took place there.
Right.
So, so we had to suffer those slings of being denied loans or living arrangements or even our lives if we stood up against the system. So we need to look at those examples, not spend our time worrying about who betrayed us, but look at positive examples we have and let's see how we can nurture that. SNCC was one of those organizations that carried out grassroots leadership. It had 150 young men and women who devoted their life as staff, we would call field secretaries, to go into the Black Belt Deep South to organize communities, to build voter registration drives, to educate the community on the power structure and how it works, and to build schools and educational institutions to give us the truth about our history and our culture. So we have those kind of examples. The Black Panther Party grew a lot of leaders. The Revolutionary African Party, RNA, I believe it's called, the Republic of New Africa. Madonna, the Black Economic Development Council, the religious faith organization. So we have many of those on it, but they're not propped up and put before you as heroes and models. They're trying to tear them down and keep them isolated from your brain. So we need to do our study and looking to see who our real leaders were and what they fought for, and how can we keep that beat going and keep it moving forward.
Let me rephrase my question real quickly, because I know we've had leaders. Marcus Garvey is one of the greatest inspirations in my personal life. But we've had programs like the COINTELPRO initiative, Hoover, that infiltrated the Black Panthers, right? That infiltrated a lot of the movements. So what I'm asking, and my apologies for not being clear on it, is not a lack of leaders. If we've had so many leaders, why have we not been successful in establishing Black institutions? And an example of why, I have an idea for myself, and I would say programs like the COINTELPRO program, the resistance that we have to go against. I want to hear your perspective as to why we have not been able to, because we don't have these Black institutions to even stop police brutality. When we have the Congressional Black Caucus, which should be a Black institution as a power force to bring a shutdown, from my thinking, of this whole police brutality. And I'm just mentioning one thing, right? The list goes on of the many things that we need. So the question is, yes, we've had leaders. Why have we not been successful in building this Black global institution that empowers the Black nation, and what we continue to go through stops?
That's our goal. That's what we're aiming for. Right. That's what self-determination is about. Mm-hmm. So we have to do that. And you mentioned all of, and there are still others you can continue to mention, right, that stood in the way of us putting together Black enterprises, Black schools. One of those is the internalized oppression, where we feel like we don't need to support our own institutions, that white ice cream is better than Black-made ice cream. Right. You know, all those kind of things that go into play while we don't support our schools, our institutions. There's also the lack of economic leverages we could have. Richard Pryor did a beautiful piece years ago where he told this white boy going into a bank saying, "Man, can you give me about $10,000? I need it all. I don't have no credit. I don't have no. In fact, I've been to jail. I don't know. I never paid my bills back." He said, "You only want 10,000? Here's 100,000." You know, and a brother come in there and said, "No, what do you want? You go back to the back in the line and wait." So I mean, that's the kind of apparatus that's set up to keep us disenfranchised and without the required tools and equipment and supports we need to go forward. Right. COINTELPRO was devised by John J. Edgar Hoover. It's still alive today, and it can be pulled up at any time to be used. In fact, here in Dallas, about 4 years ago, there was a young man who owned a rifle and had a rifle club. He was locked up without his family knowing where he was, in prison, not charged with any offense because he had a rifle club. They called him a terrorist. Under the banner of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, they can label whoever they want to a terrorist, right, and lock you up and not throw away the key and not even tell your family or have a bond for you to get out to protest it. Right. So those tools are powerful tools that enhance with the power regime that we have now. So we've had responses to that. We demand for change. We demand for equal rights. We demand for an end of those kind of oppressive steps and deeds that's been taken. Right. So that's the fight. That's what the fight is about. At the same time, we cannot stop with a protest march against a lynching in Missouri, right, and vent our anger and then go back home. Right. We got to organize. We got to plan. We got to persist. We got to expand our bases. We got to be clever and be nimble about the changes. We got to move toward policy change, for new elections change, for new laws. All those things got to be a part, not just to have a vent our feeling and go home. We got to vote. We got to get people in position of power to be able to legislate change, to create new policies, not only governmental policies, but corporate policies as well. Yes. And so all of those things got to take place. And that's what we're fighting about, Trevor. That's not because we're going to look back and say, "Oh, we didn't do so good back then." We're going to make that right now. That's the charge in front of our generation today, to right, keep moving forward and not be stuck in the past.
And that's what I want to do. That's what I wanted to hear. The last thing that you just broke down, we gotta focus on policy. I wanted solutions. You know, what are the solutions to what we know about? because what I love to do is look back at past leadership, because you're right, we have them, we have had them. I look at their successes, I look at where they struggled, and I try to make sure that I don't duplicate the struggle aspect of it, and I take advantage as much as I can of their successes and learn what I can. But now, policy. Let's speak a little bit about policy, because some people are quick to say, and I've been one of those to say in the past, but one of the most successful proofs is Frederick Douglass, that the system can actually work in our favor if we use the system against the system. Because what's written in the Constitution of the United States of America truly says, we, the people of the United States of America. But a lot of people don't believe that the system works. That's why people don't vote, Brother Mac. They don't want to vote because my vote don't count. You know, they make you believe that your vote don't count, so you don't even go out there and vote in the first place. Let's talk a little bit about the potential of the vote, the potential of approaching it from lobbying power and pushing policies that can actually change everything.
Yeah, I think it calls for a multitude of weapons that we have at our disposal to utilize. The vote is probably the key to, I won't even say probably, it is the key to, in a democratic society, making change. You have the tricks and games for voter suppression that are anomalies all across the country, for gerrymandering districts, to making districts where they make sure the same people get in time and time again. We have people fighting against even votes will show the winners clearly somebody, but they're saying it ain't that person. So with the president, for example. So you got people who are in power who are manipulating the government and so forth. We have to start at the local level to make change. Local, we're going to have to act local and think globally. So wherever you are, if you're in Oakland or if you're in Dallas or Accra, wherever you are, what can you do to change the postal system, the school board makeup, the city council, the alderman, the dog catcher, whatever, all of those things we got to have an influence over.
Right.
And then we build on it and organize it on a precinct level.
Right.
So it's step by step. It's not going to be overnight cures. Right. We have to venture our talent and our energy and concentrate on campaign after campaign after campaign. And then it has to be replicated to where those who learn from that can venture off into other areas and make that successful. So it grows by leaps and bounds exponentially. Hopefully, that's the prayer. So you may have a few people with one success. They take that lesson and learn and teach others that method they made, and it becomes to expand and grow and have a life of its own. So it has already started. It's not anything brand new, but we just got to keep our concentration, keep our eyes on the prize, and not give up hope because things don't happen like we want to overnight. As far as talking to someone about voting, and they said, no, we can't win. I got the same thing when I was trying to organize a union in a factory. The union sold us out, man. I can't become a part of that. But we were able to get some victories when just a handful of people to challenge the grievance process, for example, to say, you know, you were hurt on the job and this union official won't take care of you. We'll take care of it. The rank and file will, and we'll give you a chance. So we were able to build small victories like that to where people saw, oh man, it does work. It does have to get the union on our side. So we can do the same thing in our local area, starting small. There may be a change from a curriculum added in the school board to a new seat on city council to a new library building, the name of Marcus Garvey, let's say. Right. Those kind of things begin to pay off and show. But we're not going to have a revolution overnight. It won't happen. It's going to happen through painstaking, persistent, persevering attitude to fight and be committed to that fight, number one, and keep waging the fight. And so I just want to encourage our young people to see that there are victories we can show and we can attest to. But you can show real life examples about what you're doing there. I think what you're doing with the community in the South, Central America, and so forth, and building awareness about owning the land and about building land ownership and enterprises is a necessary lesson to share. Right. And then there are some things we're doing locally that we just kind of think is nonsensical, we shouldn't talk about, but they're very important. So every victory counts, and we've got to share that victory and keep moving forward. So I can't make a formula for it. I don't know the answers for every particular situation, or any perhaps, but we do have the resources to concentrate a superior force, overwhelm the enemy. So let me put that in quotation mark, and make a victory. And then you do victory after victory by overwhelming the victory and carrying forward.
Agreed upon. And Brother Mac, I always like to ask a question where the response is yes or no.
Okay.
Sometimes it's real hard to answer yes or no to a question, right? Okay. But this is that part of the segment. Yes or no? Would you consider yourself a protector of democracy?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I do consider myself a protector of democracy as well. The second part, the second question, Brother Mac, if you could give us a message as we close, and the message is going to be to the boys, directly to the boys, the message directly to the girls. This includes the men and the women, and the Black nation as a whole. With your life experiences as a community builder, and when I ask you, Mr. Mac, hey, what's your title, man? Because I've seen you under several banners. And at the end of the day, you say, I'm a community builder. That says a lot about you and your character inside and out. What would that message be to us?
Wow. I don't think I have an answer per se to satisfy that awesome question. But I'd just like to say a couple of things. And basically, the whole idea of community is coming together and sharing our resources and being mutually supportive of one another, but being in solidarity with one another. There's an attitude we can have like, okay, I can sympathize with these people, or I can be charitable toward these people. But each one of those is kind of filled with an ego or looking down at someone. The idea of community is co-creation, of working together, mutual aid, of brothers and sisters under the sun coming together. And so wherever that is, Martin Luther King called it a beloved community. That's what we're striving for, because it's not going to be the laws that make change. It's not going to be the policies that make change. It's going to be the relationships of people in the community, how we see each other, how we support one another. How can we be a blessing to others and not just look out for ourselves? So I think the idea of community is something we need to operate on, to implement in our hearts and carry out in our daily deeds. And it could be like I'm doing right now with a community garden. We have a small community garden of maybe 14 people involved. And then the food we raise, the crops we harvest, go to the homeless or to the people who are most in need. We don't eat the food ourselves, we share it. And so we're out there working, and what we do is we learn from each other about their family situations, and we find out what kind of connections we have with others. So if somebody knows that somebody's sick at home, or who has COVID, or who needs some help, or about to be evicted, we come to the support of that person. Right. And so that's how we grow community. We're growing crops, but that is a side product. What we're doing is growing relationships, caring, responsive people working together. So I would like to see us take on that spirit of community in our daily lives, to see ourselves not above, not separate, but deeply connected. And the person we see looking at is basically us looking at ourselves too. We are that other person, and we are that spirit. So I'm hoping that we can inflame, excite, ignite the spirit of community more and more wherever we are. And so that's my prayer. That's my hope. I think that will lead to the basic changes we need in relationships, and relationships determine connections, and connections determine power, and power determines leverage for movement and change. So it all ties in together. And I wish I could be more specific or calling for the answer, but it's not possible for my brain right now. But I do see community as the road, the path to take toward uplifting ourselves and changing our life conditions to a better one, not for just our generation, but future generations to come.
Thank you, sir. And I'm looking at your backdrop there, the picture of the Black warriors, and I see the men behind and the boys standing in front of them, right? This day is a historic day because it's one of my first shows for WAMALALI out of Buni Amurü Nuni Media Africa, but it is also African History Month. Right? The warriors, the men and the boys ahead of them. Can you? This is what you have been representing in my life. You're the man behind. You're the row of men in the back, and I'm the guy in the orange, and I'm one of the little boys looking back at you in the white. And I believe the colors mean something as well. Speak to us a little bit about that relationship in closing between the man and that boy.
Okay. First of all, this was a gift provided me maybe 20 years ago when I was a leader of the Fifth Ward Enrichment Program. And it really kind of capsuled in my heart, my mind, what we're all about. It's about how can we create an ongoing system for helping boys become men and take on positive pathways. And that requires rituals or rites of passages. And so we honor the young people by taking them under our wings and taking them away from their mothers, for example, for a minute or two routinely, and talking about the way we can grow strong in our heart and become courageous in facing ourselves and facing our enemies. So it's a process of celebrating and acknowledging the development stages at each level. You see a young man in the back who's envious perhaps of those who's standing out there, but one day he'll be out there. Right. You see some young man with 1 bead, and then they'll graduate to 2 beads or 3 beads, and they'll become the Maasai warrior standing in the rear with the red beads, fully armed, trained, poised, connected, strong, and ready to defend their community and ready to support whatever needs to be supported. And so we come from a generation where I guess maybe 2 out of 3 young men grew up in single parent homes, being raised by a grandmother or a mother or aunt. And the crack epidemic wiped out a whole generation of women to be mothers who were so addicted to crack cocaine that they abandoned their children, so to speak. And so we, at that particular time in the 80s, gang violence was horrific. Crack epidemic was horrific. HIV destruction of our community was horrific at large scale levels. And so we had to resort to, and I think we continue to need to resort to our own resources within our community that are positive male role models. In this particular instance, it could be positive female role models as well, banding together with young girls. Right. But in this example with us, it was men helping boys to grow straight, tall, strong, and vigilant and alert and aware of what they need to be doing. So that process is what we try to build in our own way, on our own soil, not in East Africa, but right in Fifth Ward, Texas. Right. What our culture called for, there was award ceremonies, field trips to the countryside to learn how to find our way through the woods, to set up our own little businesses, whether it be bike repair or computer repair or t-shirt making, and learn those skills and be under the guidance of men who were not trying to steer them wrong, not trying to harm them, not trying to exploit them, but try to help them grow, become productive and independent and responsible. So that's the kind of thing what we did, and hope we need to do that continually to where we begin to fill the void. And people who come up 9, 10 years old are now in their 40s, like TREVOR, PALACIO, who are leading the way. So you're proof positive that this ritual process is important and can work with others. So I just want to thank you for being a manifestation of the growth of our work and deeds. And I feel like I'm at ease more now, knowing we're in good hands. You know?
Mr. Mac, man, it's going from boys to men. As you know, it's an extremely arduous process, man. It's complicated. It's there's really no recipe to follow, right? There's really no manual to go to.
True.
Right? Because your experiences growing up will be similar to mine, but different at the same time. And being in the Fifth Ward Enrichment Program, being surrounded by people like you, Brother Lethuli, Brother Charles Savage, Brother Frank, may he rest in peace, Brother Ray, the Sister Smith, Sister Whipple, the list goes on of individuals who just showed care and love for the entire community, and everyone mothered and fathered these boys. And that has made an impact in my life. I am the person that I am today, in closing, for many reasons. Many, I call it the gumbo effect of life. I am that gumbo soup, and I'm made up of so many different things, right? And I just want to say, Brother McMillan, it is an honor to be interviewing you today. For those who don't know, McMillan has been my mentor for 30 plus years. I'm 43. This man has been in my life for 30 plus years. You, sir, are a part of that gumbo. You are a main ingredient in the man that I am, the man that I have become and continue to become and aspire to be. People like you continue to exist. You are a living legend because you were there during the times of Malcolm and Martin. You're here in the times of George Floyd, in the times of Don Wanye Jones. And you're going to be here for a little bit longer to see the fruits of your action come to pass and manifest. And it's manifesting through us. So it's been an honor to interview you tonight. Today, this morning, we had no questions. So we're going to leave it at that. And again, everyone, this is African History Month. And truth be told, every day is African history, right? Every day is African history. But we want each of you to take this month to reflect by doing some research on someone outside of your community. We have Google. Just Google someone out. And when I say outside of your community, if you are in Kenya, look up someone in Ghana. And if you're in Kenya and Ghana, look up someone in Jamaica. Okay? A pioneer from Venezuela. Look someone up this month to learn something new about yourself. Because when you look that person up and you find that person, you would have found you. Thank you for joining us today. Buni Amurü Nuni Media Africa. Have a great day. Salute.